So hello everyone again. We will start now. I will just hand over to Alex to start with the first presentation and a short introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Eva. I hope everyone can hear me well. Warm welcome from my side too. We're here with webinar 7. I will just give a quick introduction to the schedule. So we'll have 4 presentations. I will start with the perspective of Applied Science Institute with 4 megatrends on future mobility. Then Joachim from Rogaland County Council will talk about his application project with battery buses, something he has done partly in Triangulum. Then we'll have Trond from Lyse talking about charging infrastructure, of course, again, a practical view on this. And then we have Martine from Manchester. We will also talk about encouraging the use of electric mobility for public and private partners, also knowledge she has gained within the project Triangulum. Without further ado, I would like to change into my presentation. Each presentation will be between 15 and 20 minutes long, and afterwards we will have a discussion amongst each other and of course also with the presenters. So my topic is the mega trends in future mobility, and I will present to you practical examples of 4 of these mega trends as we see it from Fraunhofer, from the applied science perspective. The most important ones. I will talk also a bit about electrification of mobility. I will talk about the new autonomous vehicles, what potential there are, what is currently happening in that area. I will talk about shared mobility, a big mega trend in many areas too, I think. Uber and many other commercial products are all well known to you. And then a trend which is not as much researched or also present in the media currently is the individualization of mobility. In this part also a term digitalization and connected mobility, a term that's much more used. So I'll go through these 4 megatrends with you and show you some practical examples, stuff that's currently happening in this area. And I will start with shared systems, so with sharing vehicles, and I will start with an animation of one of our joint labs with the MIT. So it's a project we have done together with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. What you can see here in yellow and blue are all the pickups and drop-offs in New York City by taxis, so by cabs, in yellow cabs in New York City. And as you can see, there are quite many of those. And these pickups and drop-offs are so much, they are so dense that we had the idea to check if these, what happens if not just one person is in each vehicle, but 2 share the same car. And we just put some very practical boundaries around it. So you do not want to lose more than 5 minutes and you do not want to walk more than 500 meters. And then we checked what would be the potential, how many of those cabs could be shared. And the percentage is quite stunning. So over 90% of cab rides can be shared just by pooling within an additional range of 5 minutes of travel time and 500 meters of walking. If you do the math a little further, then you can see that doing this, just putting not 1 but 2 persons in the same vehicle, can spare you 40%, even in practical terms. So this is on real data. This is 100% of the data that is 100% of the cabs that is collected in New York. So you only would need 60% of the cabs. So without any further changes, without just organizing the system a little differently, you could just have about half the vehicles off the street. And as you all know, congestion and travel time are related not in a linear way, but in a overlinear way. So that if you put one car off the street. When you have 1,000 vehicles on the street, then it's worth a lot more than if you put one vehicle off the street when you only have 100 on the road. So that's one of our examples. So just astonishing numbers, which you can see if you go through some of the data. A more practical example, or something that has happened in real world. So we have been part of the introduction of Car2Go in Stuttgart. It's the first, or still the biggest electric vehicle free floating car sharing in the world. It started with about 500 electric smarts. And there we got a little more practical insights in what it is if you do free floating car sharing. So free floating car sharing means that cars are not station bound. You can put them, you can leave them anywhere in the operation zone, and you can pick them up and drop them off anywhere in the zone, so you don't have to bring them back to any stations. And what we learned throughout this process is that that there's evolving a lot of things to be learned. So for example, the vehicles move into the city in the morning and out of the city in the evening. So if you want to get a cab, an electric vehicle or a Car2Go in the evening in Stuttgart Center, for example, where I live, it's kind of hard because the people drag them out to the outskirts of the city center when they go home in the evening. We've also done some experimentation on how to access this vehicles. There have been Bluetooth tests with the mobile phones. The whole system started with RFID cards, so you had your own card that you put in your pocket and then just access it with a code. So currently, how Car2Go works is with an app, which is GPS based, and then you get access also with your code. That's very convenient and improves the system quite a lot. If you're thinking about as a city or as a company to introduce your own shared system when it comes to vehicle sharing, one of the dogmas that has been true for kind of long, that you use only vehicles that are already there, is not true anymore. It's kind of simple, and there are lots of small companies that create new vehicle types. Now this is one we built our own, the electromobile city scooter. It's a normal electric scooter, except we changed the back axis into a two-wheel axis, so that you can just stand at any time and you do not fall over. So it's not only the big German, French, or Asian OEMs that provide vehicles for car sharing anymore. For example, the Deutsche Post, the German National Post Service, is building their own electrical car sharing fleet, which they built specifically for their purpose, and use them to deliver mail and packages. And so they are actually one of the biggest electric car manufacturers in the world now. So it's due to this technological change, there's a lot of new possibilities in the market. I'll now hop over to the next megatrend, which is autonomous driving, and I want to show you an example of what we are currently working on. So let me start with this. The technology with autonomous driving is quite far, it's quite advanced. There are still lots of legal challenges, lots of challenges in the area of how to organize the system, priorities, legal issues, also social issues, psychological issues. But the technology itself, is really quite advanced. You can get semi-automated driving pretty much in every high-class vehicle. The Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the Tesla itself had something called the autopilot, which isn't fully autonomous driving, but is getting very close. And so the technology isn't really the thing. But if you think of that system, that will be for quite a long time, a mixed system of people driving and autonomous vehicles driving. There is this issue of vehicles communicating with persons. And that's something we are experimenting with currently in a project called Urban Driven, so that the people can communicate with the cars and the other way around, in an area that hasn't been researched too much in the meantime. And the funny part about this is that all the data this vehicle needs to communicate with persons, or also to recognize persons, these sensors needed is actually nothing more but an Xbox Kinect. So the gaming console Xbox offers an array of sensors, which is built into a tiny little thing called Kinect, and it's only €100, $100 actually. And this data that this sensor gathers is actually enough to recognize people and to do the funny stuff of communicating. Fun part also when it comes to autonomous vehicles is that you can, when you do not spend the time in vehicle driving anymore, you have lots more opportunities than what you could do and what you maybe would like to do. So we did a survey in 3 different countries. We did it in the USA, in Germany, and in Japan, to find out what is the things that people want to do when they are driving. And normally, in science and in many industry sectors, there's 5 different levels of automation we are talking about. It's actually, we simplified this a little to 3 different ways of automation. One is the feet off. It's the automatic speed control that you all know from current cars already. The second one is the hands off, so that you do not have to steer anymore. The first things are already trialed, or actually in big scale cars. The BMW i3, for example, drives fully autonomously with no hands needed on highways already, and well, only until a speed limit of 60 kilometers an hour. So it's actually a congestion assistant. And then there's the third part. So there's feet off, hands off, and then there is actually the brain off, where the car does everything by itself. So that's the 3 levels of automation we are talking about, and we checked which requirements, or what's needs and services that people want to have. And I would like to ask you which one you think is most important for this sector. We of course hope that also for the business models behind it, that everyone who drives to work and drives home wants to be productive, wants to work. That's where we could create business models around employees paying for these services, but that's by far not true. It's actually one of the most unimportant ones. So by far the most important one for people, or what they would do when they wouldn't need to drive, is communicate. So that they would call people, they would have Skype chats, they would just communicate, also maybe inside the car, but working is really, really not important. The second most important one is, so if people have time in the car, they would love to be communicating or entertained. So watching movies, playing video games. And that's true for all the 3 countries we have been looking at: Japan, USA, and Germany. Some more key findings of this survey. We asked also if people are willing to pay for this additional service additional services in cars, and one of them one of the major things we learned is that 75% of users are willing to pay for these services. If you put this also into an order, which nationalities would like to pay most, or would be willing to pay most, people from the United States are willing to pay the most. Then it's people from Japan, but Germans are, let's say, less used to or less willing to pay in this areas. Okay, my next section would be electric mobility. Again, just some insights, a little more practical insights, because this is already a little deeper into the market. Stuttgart has the most dense charging network, slow charging network in Germany, and we had the luck to receive the data from the provider currently. So we checked which ones are those that are most used, which are the charging stations most used in Stuttgart. So we are talking about AC, alternating current charging up to, practically up to 7 kilowatt hours. So it's actually slow charging. And they are, all over the city. And which is what's quite surprising for us is that the most used charging station in all over Stuttgart is in an area called Lugensland. It's it's a blue collar or workers area, so it's actually where all the the workers from Daimler live. And they had at the beginning special schemes to receive electric cars. They could also use the fleet from Daimler privately. So this is why these charging stations at these areas were used the most. Second one is at public bath in the northern part of Stuttgart. So it's very, very well placed. So you actually plug in the car and you can enter directly via the front entrance. And then there is a third one directly at the University of Stuttgart, where lots of the car-to-go tend to stand in the morning, and the students are receiving free time to travel the cars if they plug them in, and there are plenty of charging stations around the university. So this is why those are used the most. When it comes to electric vehicles, charging on the car side is solved for quite a while, but the problems now occur a lot in the electricity network. And so what is happening is that in the area of Baden-Württemberg in the south, which is really kind of a more developed place in the world, there was a place where we couldn't place 3 charging stations next to each other because the medium voltage grid, not the local grid, but the medium voltage grid could not offer the electricity, the power needed. So this is why there are concepts of smart grids, so managing the peak demand a little better. And why this is necessary, I'll show you on this graph. We have had a Porsche here with 80 kilowatts, so testing vehicle, and the peaks that you can see here. Actually, so this is the lower graph is actually all the electricity our whole campus needs. It's the second biggest science campus in Germany, and just this one vehicle charging, you can see these peaks in the whole of an area that employs 3,000 people and has many, many research labs. And as I said, it's the second biggest science campus in Germany. But you can see the peaks of just this one vehicle charging in the whole power curve of the area. And this is the 80 kilowatt vehicle. If you understand that there is tests currently with 350 kilowatt vehicles, so about 3 to 4 times this, you can imagine what that means to local grids. Also, when it comes to money, we pay 20% extra on a bill that I cannot tell you the exact amount, but it's quite substantial, just because of these peaks. Because you have in Germany, you have two parts to your energy bill. One is the kilowatt hour based, and one is actually the power based one, the kilowatt based one. Yeah, just a quick look into one of our ideas on how to solve this problem also in a scattered way. This charge launch also has a battery inside, so it needs a very, very low connection to the grid, and can still serve via battery many different cars in a very, very high power system. And just for you to know, as part of our cooperation in Triangulum, this one will very soon be in Eindhoven in Stripe S with our partner Volker Wessels, who will then operate us over the next years. It will be presented in the World Design event next year. The whole concept is very flexible because you still, when you're charging, you have to wait a while. So we have had one which we put at IKEA, and they have a sustainable living exhibition right behind these chargers, so that people, while they are charging, also outside of opening hours, can walk in and have a look into what IKEA does in the area of sustainable living. The last part is connected mobility, which I would like to talk about. The first thing that always comes to mind is this one integrated card of services for public transport. I've been part of a project called the Stuttgart Service Card. It's very, very similar to what we know from many other places in the Octopus in Singapore, in London, the integrated travel card. And this one was intended to do the same. The interesting part is technically, it's really, really simple to integrate all the services. So to have a card that opens the car to go to use at the public transport, also to use maybe for public services. The real problem, and also why this system didn't really, use all its potential, was because the stakeholders couldn't agree on terms on who owns which data and who is allowed to use which data. So this is the main problem with these kind of integrated systems. You have a wide range of stakeholders, especially private ones included as well, then it's really hard to distribute rights of the data. Intermodality has been a big issue in recent years. Not very successful. Let's be frank with that. Very, very few people use more than 2 modes to get to anywhere, and this is because the interchange is a very, very big problem. So every time you change mode, that's perceived as unneeded. It's very, very inconvenient to do this. So we tried to measure this, and we measured how with sensors the inconvenience with people, so heart rates and also how quick they are moving and stuff, to receive a little more insight, and also maybe to give people more information on how they are moving, how much CO2 they are emitting in this one. So not only that you can choose the fastest route, but you can choose the most convenient one, or the one that is most CO2 neutral, so most climate friendly. So yeah, and then just a very quick look. That's my last point into individual or connected mobility. Is we do not know too much about mobility. We have very, very few information on when, why, and how people are moving when it comes to the whole mobility system. The information currently used most is survey data, huge scale, very, very expensive service. And we have done a little comparison of which data are most suitable to do what. And we compared 5 different kinds of data: surveys as the most important ones, the most used ones currently, automated traffic counts, so everything that is collected with sensors that also contains CCTV, floating car data, so data that are created in a GPS accuracy inside vehicles. That can be cars, that can be buses, that can be other public transport modes. Then mobile GPS data, which is actually the stuff that, for example, Google and Waze collect. So GPS accurate data from your mobile phone, and mobile network data. So the data that are collected in the mobile network. So whenever you log into a new cell, then there is an event being created in the backend of the cell phone provider, and that gives you the location of a person, which is of course not relatable to a specific person, but it can give you information on how people travel. And those data we used, and we checked how accurate they are and if they can be used. So we checked how people move in the area of Stuttgart when it comes. So this is all from mobile network data. So from our partner Telefonica, which gave us this. So they have 2 billion data points created every day in that area, only in Germany. 2 billion data points, and we only organized this did some research in Stuttgart, and we checked what is the main links that how people travel in the area. And so if you look into the middle, I hope you can see my cursor. You see that there is kind of a, it's kind of slim, a tail here in the middle. And this is because Stuttgart has only very, very few points to enter, and this is like the most congested and most polluted area in when it comes to air in Germany. And this is why lots of the car travel also is routed through the city center, because there is almost no way to go around. We also checked what influences people's behavior to travel. So this is an event. It's the Stuttgart Beer Fest. It's the Stuttgarter Vasen, second biggest beer fest after the Oktoberfest in Germany, and so I guess also in Europe. And we checked what influences the people to travel there and to go there. And we saw this slide, what it actually shows is that the most important decisive factor to travel or not to travel at a specific time is the weather. So we thought of many different things, events, student evenings and stuff, but it's actually the weather that makes people go or not. And then we also did a spatial analysis. We compared two events. On the left side, you see the beer fest, and on the right side, you see the a wine fest, so a much smaller thing that is actually located here in the city center, the wine fest. And here you see the Spring Festival, the beer fest, which is located a little further in the north. And the darker the red is, the more people came from that area. So what is actually quite interesting is that most of the people that go to the beer fest are from this, let's say, blue collar neighborhoods here up in the north, where the people who work for Porsche, Bosch, and Daimler at the assembly lines live. And there's another peak here in the southern part. This is where the student dormitories in Stuttgart are. This is also a huge flow into this festival. It looks completely different if you look into the wine festival, which is kind of pricey, a little pricey wine. And this here in the south, these are the areas where the lawyers live, or this is actually the south is the more affluent area, where the lawyers, doctors live here in this area. And we couldn't really understand this peak up here, why this one is so important, but this is actually the Bosch headquarters, and they organize after the, after they finish work, they like in a whole bunch walk down into this wine festival to go there and have a wine together. I think I want to skip this one. With all this data, what you can actually do is also, define new services and see what their potential is. And we have done this in a different project called iMove that provides, tailored services to the people that are moving somewhere using a completely different data set. But using this kind of data can also help you to define services to a customer group. This is impulses for future scientific work. As I've talked for quite a while, I don't want to go through them. It's just to show you that there is still lots of work to be done when it comes to new mobility modes and new innovations in mobility. So whoever wants to join us at any time with answer any of these questions, we're really happy to do this. And this would be then the end of my presentation, with the only addition that we have still, because there's the end of the car has been, announced by many people. We don't think so. It will still be an important mode of transport for the next years. And so I would like to end with this and say thank you very much for your time, and I would hand over back to Eva, who will introduce the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Alex, for the interesting presentation. I will now hand over to Joachim.
Yes, thank you. I think I have to start my presentation. So I hope you all can see my presentation now.
Yes, we can see it, but we cannot hear you that good.
You can't hear me that good. Well, that's a pity. Better now?
Yes, maybe you can speak a little bit louder or move closer to your micro.
Yeah, it's pretty close already.
Okay, now it's good. Yes, thank you.
Good. I will talk about our nice battery buses and the experiences we made so far with these 3 buses. As you probably all know, we bought these 3 battery electric buses within the Triangulum project. These are standard 12-meter buses. And according to our operator, they today have a range of just under 300 kilometers. Charging time is about 5 hours, from 0% to 100%. Everything goes on, everything is electric except the heating aggregate, because that takes a lot of electricity, of course. This aggregate is running by biodiesel. Just wanted to say something about the design, because I I think it's so nice. Even today I saw these 3 buses. I saw actually all 3 buses this morning, and always when one of these buses is passing me, I'm really happy. And well, we made this design competition to have some kind of citizen involvement. We wanted the buses to be visual in the city. And this design competition we arranged together with a local street art festival. And it was 3 high schools taking part in this competition. Well, some classes of these high schools, 110 students. And at the end, we had internet voting and had 21,000 votes. So that really shows that people are interested in this project. So here we made really nice experiences. But I wanted to say something more about our experiences with the buses and what we have done so far. We ordered the buses, or we signed a contract with the producer, a Dutch producer, in autumn 2015. The buses were then produced in China, because they don't produce the buses in the Netherlands. The buses were delivered in December 2016, 7 months delayed, which of course is not very nice. The delay was caused by internal problems the producer had. It's a very small producer, and then suddenly they got several orders, got liquidity problems, had to find new investors, and they managed that. At the end, we got the buses. In addition, there was a typhoon destroying the factory in China. Nothing you can do about that, but still causes delays. The buses were delivered at the 30th of December. We said to them in a meeting that if we do not get the buses within 2016, we would cancel the contract. So the last day, in a way, we got the buses. But since they then were in a kind of a hurry to deliver the buses, they were delivered in a, I would call it in a semi-finished, they were delivered semi-finished. So we had to do the final, well, not we, but the producer had to do the final assembling in Stavanger. That means that technicians from the Netherlands had to come to Stavanger. The challenge with these technicians was that they were more like data engineers and not real technicians that use a screwdriver and so on. But at the end, we got the buses finished and now they're running. We still have some challenges because not everything that we ordered or were promised by the producer is yet installed. So we're holding back some of the payment to get all these things done. The buses were then presented to the public in 2017, since we had this nice design competition and wanted the citizens to be involved in this project. We had arrangement, and I think we got rid of 2,000 muffins that we gave away. So that shows that there are quite some people that came and were interested in the buses. So that was very nice. The buses are running now, as it says here, since February this year. And we also have installed a monitoring system in the buses where you can see in real time where, a lot of things. Where is the bus? How fast is it driving currently? How much energy is it using? How much energy is left in the battery? And so on. A lot of things that you can get out of this monitoring system. And that, of course, is very good, because then we can produce nice charts like that. Consumption, well, this shows the consumption per month and bus, consumption in kilowatt hours. You can get out kilometers driven per month, per day, consumption per day, all these things. I chose that one because here you see very nice how much the buses have been driving in hours. And you see in the beginning they were driving less, now they're driving a lot more. You see also, well, for bus 11, I have to mention that in September we had some problems with the SIM card in the bus. That means that we did not receive any data. It says at the blue column, yes, for September it shows something 24 hours the bus was driving. It was actually a lot more, but we did not receive any data. So this in a way also challenges that we have to deal with, but this is not related to the fact that this is a battery bus. This can also happen with a standard diesel bus. The challenges with the buses. We have something that we call Rekkeviddeangst, which is in a way the fact that the drivers, the bus drivers, are in a way afraid that the battery will not last. They don't really trust the instruments in the dashboard regarding the remaining energy. They have to get used to that. You have the same with private car owners when they buy the first electric car. Then in the beginning they do not trust the instrument when it says you have enough electricity to get to drive for, I don't know, 10, 20, 40 kilometers. You get used to that, and we see that as well. But of course, for a driver in a bus, that can create a really uncomfortable situation in case you really do not have enough energy left. If you drive with your own private car, then the car stops and it's in a way your own problem. But as a bus driver, you have your passengers, and they probably are not very happy if the bus suddenly has to stop because of an empty battery. Luckily, this so far did happen very seldom. I don't think it happened more than 5 times for all the 5 buses that we have. Another challenge is, of course, charging time. We have a charging time of 5 hours today. Currently, we're working on a solution to charge the buses within 2.5 hours. Yes. Another problem when it comes to charging is the fact that sometimes the bus drivers, when they park the bus in the depot in the evening, they just forget to plug in the bus in the evening, so the bus doesn't charge. And of course, then you have a battery bus. It's not a diesel bus. In the morning, you have an empty bus. With a diesel bus, you just can fill in some diesel and then you can drive. Doesn't work with a battery bus. Another quite big challenge is the fact that we had so far quite some downtime for some buses, and this is in a way due to the fact that it's a small producer with no network, no local garage or dealer. You don't have this kind of problem with a big producer, with a big company like, I don't know, like Mercedes or MAN, Volvo, which have a garage or dealer, yeah, almost in every city. Of course, the maintenance personnel from our operator have been instructed by the producer how to maintain the buses on a daily basis. I mean, they do the same with diesel buses. Just the difference is that they really know diesel buses. They don't know battery buses as well. They have to learn. And also sometimes a bus just has to be fixed in a garage, or a spare part is needed. And then the technician from the producer has to come from the Netherlands. And that, of course, takes some time. Sometimes you also need a spare part. And since the buses are produced in China, it can happen that you have to order this spare part from China. And that, of course, also takes a while to arrive in Stavanger. And all this together with the fact that we at the beginning had some challenges regarding the response time from our producer caused quite some downtime for some buses. I have to say that the response time is now a lot better. The communication with the producer is much better than in the beginning. So this also has improved. The table that is shown shows that for one bus we had a downtime of 51 days due to a cooling fan that wasn't working anymore. Another bus had a downtime of 40 days because of the servo steering that didn't work. And of course, if you have a bus that is in a way part of a schedule that has to drive a certain route, a certain day, a certain time, and you don't have the bus for a long period, that causes quite some quite some problems. But as I showed on the previous, this previous chart, things are getting better. The buses are driving more now. The drivers and also the maintenance personnel is getting used to the buses. Actually, the drivers really start to like driving the battery buses. According to them, the buses are more comfortable to drive. They are more quiet. So that's really positive. And also, as I mentioned, the communication with our producer has improved a lot. A short conclusion, many things could have gone a lot better. And well, we have learned quite some lessons. We had challenges regarding the procurement process, as I mentioned, challenges regarding operating the buses, maintenance, the drivers. We also have some organizational challenges, especially the operator of the buses. As I said, when you have a bus that cannot drive, no electricity or no power in the battery, something that doesn't work, then you need to have a plan B. You need to have another bus, and that causes challenges. But we always have to remember why are we doing this project? Why are we having this pilot project? We, the County Council, have the goal to have an emission-free bus fleet within 2025. It is us that is responsible for public transportation, and we have to learn. We have to learn from all these, some mistakes that we made, things that did not work because we didn't know. I think it's a really, really good project. I think it would not be smart to buy 50 or 100 battery buses, and then you really have problems. So I think it's very smart to have this project to learn how the buses work, things we have to improve, things we have to change. And so far we are very satisfied with this project. And I think that was about it. Thank you. And now I think I hand over back to Eva.
Yeah, hi, I'm Martin Thomas. Sorry. Hi, sorry, I'm Martin Thomas. Can you hear me okay? Good, sorry, I had to leave and rejoin earlier. Okay, so somebody was making me presenter, is that right?
Yes, we can see your screen, but not the presentation.
Oh, sorry, wrong version. Okay, you can see it now. Okay, so Sophie is also on the call listening in, and we're just going to talk about the work that we've been doing in Manchester about working with public and private partners to increase the use of electric mobility, both in cars and on e-cargo bikes. And we've been working with both the public sector and private partners. So what I'm going to talk about is what we set out to do, some of the structural changes that influenced the opportunities that we had, a little bit about the electric vehicles and the charging, something about the local use of e-cargo bikes, and about some of the lessons learnt and the evaluation that we have planned. So just to kick off, our aims were focused around the wider Triangulum project and the opportunity to link the use of vehicles and cargo bikes to a bigger energy picture in our smart city district. We also wanted to provide some stimulus in the city to influence sustainable transport and how that is delivered and used in the city. And like I said, it was a really good opportunity to take change of some physical changes going on that Oxford Road corridor. And overall, what we wanted to do is just create a little bit of opportunity for people to see things differently in the city. There's not a huge take-up of electric vehicles, and so we wanted to get those out and about on the streets so that people might see what's on offer. So a little plug, I'm not going to show you this right now, but we have got a film you can watch, and that's online. I think we've had nearly about 2,000 viewings on YouTube. It's a really good opportunity to see the cars and the bikes and see people that use them talking about them. So if you want to come back to that at some point, then that's a really good opportunity for you to see them in action. So a little bit of explanation. I'll jump to this one first. The Oxford Road corridor, I'm not sure some of you will know, is our smart city district. It's a 2-kilometre route that runs from the city centre in Manchester right down to the south, and it has been one of Europe's busiest bus routes. It's quite a challenging artery into the city. We have deregulated buses, so that means that we don't have as much control in the city as we'd like. As a result, we've got lots of buses going up and down that, got cars going up and down there, got 2 major universities, hospitals, science park, so something like 70,000 staff working in those areas or studying. So it's a lot of people in a not very big space. And one of the initiatives that the city has taken with our transport authority is to actually close that road and redirect traffic onto an adjacent road, and that means that from just about last month, we have prohibited cars going down that route between the hours of 6 AM and 9 PM in the evening, unless it's an emergency vehicle or you've got special permission and that you've got a vehicle that is registered to use that route. So all cars off there, and just buses and taxis. And hopefully in the next year or so, we will have more control over our local bus services, and we'll be able to reduce the number of buses that use it as well. And what we've also done is created some Dutch cycle lanes, as we've called them, so they're properly segregated lanes, because it's a major route for people coming into the city by bicycle, and we wanted to encourage more of that. So it gives us, it's the area that Triangulum is working on, and those changes gives us a real opportunity to kind of influence behaviour and to kind of augment what Triangulum was doing. So as part of the project, we have the University of Manchester, which is referred to in here as Uniman, and we've got MMU providing 2 electric cars up to their fleet. So both those are partners in the Triangulum project, and they've used funding from Triangulum to buy some vehicles for their own use. So MMU, they go out to visit students, they go out to promote their services and the opportunities that the universities provide to school students. And what they did was they got 2 e-cars and they put them into their carpool. And the aim of that was to say to staff, you could actually come to the office, you could come to the university on public transport or on a bicycle. You don't need to bring your car because we will provide you with a car whilst you're here. And the university have focused more on their car fleet and on their vans that are to do with maintenance. So on my left side of the screen is the vans, and on the right side is the cars. So it's been a really useful model of the 2 different users, and you can see there some of the statistics that we've had to date from both those uses. And they have proved really exciting for staff. Staff are really keen to use them, particularly the staff who are using the pool car find it really interesting because it's the first time that they've might have had access to an electric car. It requires some training, it requires a different style of driving, and so they've been, both have had a really good uptake, and they are looking to expand the fleet themselves further. As part of that, we needed to provide some charging infrastructure. Manchester already had a network of 200 charging points that had been installed around the city region with some central government funding. Some of those are available on campus. The project funded a couple of extra rapid charging points that would speed up, and also some that were actually dedicated primarily for the use of these vehicles, because particularly the maintenance fleet couldn't be waiting for a public space to come available. They need to know that they can charge up, and one of the activities within Triangulum has been developing this app, so showing you which charge point would be actually available at the time. So you could make your way to the optimum one if you were a member of the MMU staff. And particularly the University of Manchester have been interested in looking at how they could not just have vans, but look at their kind of transport needs overall. So they've got some landscape guys who go around, do some work on the kind of green infrastructure of the university, and they're quite keen to actually take them away from a van and into some kind of electric tug, so they could, so this is on the right hand of the screen, so that they could actually take the tools that they need to the job. And this has particularly been influenced by the restrictions on vehicles, and there is not a enthusiasm to have lots of vehicles on that route, and for all the university's vehicles to be listed for permission. So they've been looking creatively at other ways. So they've got these diesel megavans. Whoops, sorry, jumped ahead there. Got these diesel megavans, just small vans, but what they're saying is it actually could be done via some kind of cart and some kind of way to kind of record, some kind of way to change over to a different type of electric vehicle that isn't actually a vehicle at all. One of the other challenges that we've had is around tracking. There's a strong resistance from staff to have tracking within the vehicles, and some of the vehicles that are used at the university might be taken home. We've recently had some interesting discussions with a company in Canada who provide telematics for electric vehicles, but do it via a system that allows you to turn the tracking off. Currently, we've been using Nissan's own kind of tracking telematics systems, and that's really is not for fleet use, it's for individual car use. So somebody has to log on to each vehicle and download all the stats for it, and what we'd like to do is find a way to automate that. So the university have been looking at the different ways that could work, and we were particularly interested in the offering from Fleet Karma because we could avoid having the actual global positioning system activated. And one of the things that's happening next week in Manchester, and that we're trying to tie Triangulum back to, is a Eurocar are doing an electric vehicle roadshow. So it just kind of gives us a sense that there is some momentum building. We've also been trying to do work with our own city fleet manager, and hopefully he will be attending this event and we can talk to him more about the opportunities that electric vehicles offer for the City of Manchester as well as the universities. So that's everything on cars. What I'm going to move on to now is just talking about our e-cargo bike opportunities that we've created. So this was a photograph that was in an exhibition in our local library, and it was taken in 1964. So we're not doing anything new. I know that, you know, our Dutch and Danish colleagues have got really good use of cargo bikes, and as you can see, we did use them one time, particularly in Manchester and in other parts of the UK, I'm sure, but that has not been the case in recent years. So what we did as part of Triangulum was talk to Manchester Bike Hire. So they're one of their operations is last mile delivery. So they have got their professional cycle logistics, and they deliver parcels on behalf of DHL around Manchester. So we brokered a deal with them where we would create a try before you buy scheme. So this would allow the universities and other organisations and businesses within Manchester to have a look at how a cargo bike could potentially replace a vehicle and how they could re-examine their logistics. And rather than actually going out and buying a number of cargo bikes, we decided that a better model was to have a rental agreement with Manchester Bike Hire. So they provide us with a managed service. So they have a number of bikes that we've funded them to buy, and they incorporate those into their own fleet. And that then gives us an access to across something like 10 or 12 bikes, but certainly 4 at any one time. We can loan out to local businesses, and the real kind of strength of that has emerged as being there are different options that people can use, because not everybody needs one of these big kind of bullet cargo bin approaches. Some people just need a box on the back. Some people need something bigger that fits on a trike, and the fact that they've got a diverse fleet has been really advantageous to us, because people can come along and say that could potentially work for my business, but you know, I don't, but I'm only transporting pizzas. I only want to, you know, I've got a big load, but it doesn't weigh very much. So we've had and continue to have a really good relationship with Manchester Bike Hire, and they're in it for the duration of the project, and we'll continue that scheme. The universities have taken up some use of the bikes, and particularly around post. And this was a good example where they started off using one of these bigger bikes, but actually in the end they moved to just one of the ordinary bikes with a set of panniers on, because actually these days they're not delivering very many parcels, they're just delivering small individual items of post, focused on letters really. But we have widened the scheme out to local businesses, and we've had some really interesting and entrepreneurial people. There's a lady who does Lego parties, so that's where you've got some young children and she'll come round and run a Lego party at a birthday party, for instance, or a wedding. She doesn't drive. She was previously moving her Lego kit around on a trailer, but she needed to get a new trailer. So what we've been able to do is make an arrangement where she uses a cargo bike during the evenings or at weekends when they're not in use for other things. Food's been really lends itself well to the cargo bike delivery, particularly people going out doing lunches. We've been in discussions with the local universities about cool boxes and ways that we can keep cool food cool, and any adaptations that they would need. This top one was a company that there was a sporting event on, and they wanted to distribute some free samples and promote their business. So we lent them a couple of cargo bikes, and they decorated them up, and they're since starting to look at how they could do deliveries by cargo bike rather than going back to a van. We've got an interesting project who do skateboarding for young people. So they do after school clubs, they do demonstrations at schools, they run a couple of skate parks themselves. So they've got young people who don't maybe own a car, don't maybe own a driving license working for them, and they've got high volume, low weight kit to move around between different venues. So what we're looking at is some kind of adaptations to a trailer that could facilitate that working for them, and for them there's a kind of a cool factor for turning up with their kit on a cargo bike, and could solve a lot of their logistics problems. We've also been looking at other technology that you can bring into last mile delivery. Pasteur, a company over in Slovenia, and they operate a bike and cargo lock that works together and is connected to the rider. So if a rider's making something like kind of 50 deliveries a day and is spending a couple of minutes unlocking and locking their bike, we can deploy this system. They can do it via a wearable that provides automatic locking both to the bike and the bin, and it also adds a level of tracking into at what time was that parcel taken out of the bin and what time was it delivered. So some really interesting technology that we've been able to test. The bikes have been pretty busy. This is actually a QuickTime video that just shows them scooting around. If I can get it to work, yeah, you can see the bikes. So it's a dot moving around, so you can see some of the deliveries actually taking place. We've been working with a company called AutoTrip to provide tracking on the bikes. And we've hardwired that to the battery. Again, we're kind of pushing the edge of technology there because most bikes are not tracked, and that's where we were also interested in the opportunities that Pasteur would present. So they also provide remote lock-in, and whether or not we could adapt their solutions through to the lock-in of the bike so that they didn't always have to be locked up in a unit. They could actually be left somewhere and another user could go and pick them up. So some of the figures that we've got back from AutoTrip here, and I would emphasise these are for all the cargo bikes that Manchester Bike Hire operate. Because we haven't got a specific 4 bikes that we're using, it's hard to isolate them. But you can see this is really about how much cargo bike activity is happening in Manchester, and that's quite a lot, considering that's from the start of this year through to, what we had 9-10 months. So looks quite good. So some of the lessons learnt. It's all new, both for the bikes and the cars. And I think what we always come back to is it's not just about the technology. It's about cultural change. It's about behaviour change. There's a big change for people who've always used a car or a van to ask them to suddenly start just using their bike, particularly if they're not already an interested cyclist person. So there's some educational kind of work to go on there. I think the external pressures on the corridor really also benefit that behavioural change, because people see, actually, I could be more efficient doing it in a different way. The managed service with the cargo bikes was absolutely the right thing to do. We do not have the capacity to manage machinery and to be fixing punches. Cargo bikes are a different, they're not just ordinary bicycles. So we've been very grateful that we kind of went down that route, and any problems are identified. They do regular monthly checks on the bikes. Champions are really important somebody who kind of stands up and says, you know, this is really good. It's really good to have kind of top-down leadership, but it's also really good to have people who are doing the job who are saying, this is great, and I'd like to kind of promote it. And that's one of the things that comes across in our video. Health and safety is another point. We've had to look at providing helmets and kind of protective clothing for the cyclists, and also looking at how people are trained in using electric vehicles, and particularly where people are doing it as a car share, so they're not using the same vehicle every day, so people are apt to forget exactly what to do, and how the car differs from an ordinary car. I think somebody else mentioned this about range fear. We've also had issues about carrying capacity. What would the vans be able to do what the existing diesel vans do? And that's certainly a discussion I've had with colleagues in our library service in Manchester recently, where they carry a lot of books around. You know, a big van of books is a lot of weight, and they're worried about whether or not a van would be capable of doing that if it was electric. I think one of the other changes, other lessons that we've learnt that's been interesting is this isn't just about changing a vehicle, it's also about business models, it's about logistics, it's about how you organise your business. And that's one really good thing that the Manchester Bike Hire and their experience of logistics and cargo bike delivery has been able to bring. They can talk to the business and suggest, well, actually there might be a more efficient way for you to actually work. It's not just about the bike. Tracking and privacy have been a kind of enormous obstacle that we've not really managed to kind of totally tackle. There are kind of union issues about that are perceived around knowing exactly where a member of staff is and how long it's taken them to do a job. So we've had to tread very carefully and think wisely about how we approach this, hence the interest in the Fleet Karma option. It's also worth noting that technology is changing. The cars that were bought originally, the battery range has increased already, and that will continue to do. And the other kind of motivator and kind of lesson that we've kind of learned has been around the value of livery. It's really good, and people really like that opportunity to promote their green credentials and to show that they're doing things differently. That's everything from me. Sophie and I both provide our emails on this slide if you want to come and if anybody wants to approach us directly about anything that and also we'll take questions at the end of this.